In every other debate event, the second speech in the round responds to the first speech. I don't know why we don't do it in PF. It seems like it would be really easy and really advantageous, and also like incredibly, like uniquely advantageous in PF specifically, because in other events, there's an expectation that the second speech in the debate round responds to the first speech, the second constructive responds to the first constructive. And sometimes a requirement for that as well. But in PF, you don't have a requirement. No one's expecting it, which makes it that much more likely that your opponents will not be able to handle it very well. And it gives you literally two chances to respond to an argument. So if you drop something, you have your rebuttal anyway that you can use to give new responses to it. So there's five things that I think you should do in second constructive that people are not doing at all. The first one and the most obvious one, like this is really a pet peeve of mine when people don't do this, is if there's something that you agree with from the first constructive, don't read it again. Just say that you agree with them. So this has not been a problem recently, but lots of times there have been resolutions in which both sides are reading like essentially the same argument or the same evidence for an argument on both sides. Topics that come to mind are like there was a topic a while back about the Belt and Road Initiative and whether or not the European Union should join it. And one of the arguments was if the EU joins the Belt and Road Initiative, then the Belt and Road Initiative will like grow and it will stay alive. And that was like the main argument on both sides because the AF would just say that's a good thing and the NEG would say that's a bad thing. So the debate would turn into is the BRI good or not? And there were a few fringe arguments that were not about whether or not the BRI is good, that were like, maybe the EU joining makes the BRI better, or totally unrelated things like the US will sanction the EU if it joins the Belt and Road Initiative. But like if your strategy is also going to be reading EU joins Belt and Road Initiative, that allows it to grow. And if it doesn't join, then the Belt and Road Initiative will fall apart. And your opponent just spent like a minute of their constructive reading evidence that says that, then why are you reading the same evidence again? Like it's a total waste of time. There are so many things you could do with that time that are much better. And so what you should do is just say, we agree, we agree with their case that the EU joining the Belt and Road Initiative will keep it alive. We think that's a bad thing. Here are several reasons. And then suddenly you have like an entire extra minute in your constructive that you can use to do whatever you want. This happens at a more micro scale in PF rounds all the time, though. Like, for example, tons and tons of people are reading the same impacts, and as a result, they're reading basically the same impact evidence. So if the other team is reading nuclear war causes extinction, and all of your scenarios are also nuclear war causes extinction, then why are you reading like I don't know, like the whole star card over and over again when they've already read it for you? Like just be like, we agree that nuclear war causes extinction. They told you themselves that nuclear war causes extinction, and that's all you need to do. It's the same with a bunch of other impacts. Like you don't need to be doing so much to read all of these impact cards in your case if the opponent has already read the impact cards for you. You can just save a bunch of time by saying, yes, this causes exactly what they said, which is what, bad, like they told you. So if you want to prevent that, you should vote for us. And then you can use the time that you've just saved for so many other better things. Like, guys, you already know exactly what the arguments your opponents are reading are at this point in the round. So you should go ahead and start setting up against them. Like, especially if you're reading the same impact as them, then presumably they have a link into it and you have a link into it. And those are competing links. You need to do something in the round to demonstrate why your link is better than theirs. So maybe go ahead and do that, like in the constructive. Why not, right? Why not start early? So explain, for example, why your link is stronger than their link into the same impact, or why their link is wrong. Like you could go ahead and do some weighing in the constructive. And you could go ahead and just give responses to their case. One thing that I used to do when I was doing PF is in second constructive, like at the end of constructive, I would intentionally write like a 3.5 minute case. And then in the last 30 seconds, I would just say, go to their case for responses. And then no one would know what to do with it. Like people are always shocked for some reason. They're like, whoa. And then suddenly they're completely thrown off. And it makes sense why, right? Like this is incredibly strategic in PF, especially as it's been developing recently, because right now I think that speaking first in technical rounds has slowly gotten stronger. I'm not sure it's as strong as speaking second still, But there's a case to be made that speaking first is kind of OP if you have an entire prep out that's written like full of turns, full of disads or whatever. You've timed it to 4 minutes. So you can go through a really dense speech that spreads the second rebuttal thin when they're trying to frontline and cover your case, making it more likely that they drop part of the arguments on your case as well. But you can interrupt this strategy quite easily because if you use second constructive to just throw a wrench in some of their plans, now they actually have to deal with more arguments on their case. And then also, so you're forcing them to do the work of a second rebuttal, actually. Then it throws off their prep out. They have to sacrifice some of the responses. They might not get through everything. And then suddenly they might not cover everything on your case. Which allows you to get a good time advantage as well and sort of surprise them, which is a nice element. You can also do this in really strategic ways. So it's not just that the second constructive functions as a free extra rebuttal. It's true. But it also has a unique property that makes it, I think, especially strategic, which is that you can run mutually exclusive strategies with your other responses. Like sometimes people want to run a bunch of responses that conflict with each other. And so they just pick some of them and then they don't run the other responses, which is usually smart, right? Like you don't want to double turn yourself, for example, by reading a link turn and an impact turn. And usually this actually happens mostly with impact turns, right? You don't want to impact turns are usually not as much favored because they're risky. You have to sort of commit to them. If you're going to read an impact turn, you probably shouldn't be reading other defense on their link, for example, because that would conflict with that would be reading defense on the impact turn as well. But this is a sort of a solution to that strategy because if you're worried about how they might respond to the impact turn, just read the impact turn in your second constructive. And then either they mishandle it and you're like, oh, great, I can go all in on the impact turn, or they have a million incredible responses and then you don't have to go for it anymore. Then you can say, okay, we agree, the impact turn is fake. And then read the link turn, then read a bunch of defense on their argument that you wouldn't have otherwise read because it conflicts with your impact turn strategy. And this allows you to, I think, have much better strategic sort of ability to pivot your strategy in ways that the opponent will find difficult to overcome. Plus, if they concede the impact turn, or if they really mishandle it, then it's like you have one extra speech in the round to prove how much they mishandled the impact turn. And they don't get an extra speech to respond to it, right? They don't get two speeches to frontline. They only get one because it's still part of your case. So the only chance they have to respond is rebuttal, which makes it, I think, an incredibly strategic avenue to choose. The other thing you can do in second constructive is like flex in different different implications of your case onto their case. So I talked earlier about how you can use weighing, right? Like I think you literally should put weighing in second constructive. Like this is the most important piece of offense in the round, but also like this argument is more important than theirs. One magnitude, two probably, like literally throw this in your constructive. This does not take very much time. Like think about how much time people devote to weighing in a round. Like it's usually like 30 seconds of summary and maybe like 30 seconds of final focus. That's like a minute total. If you throw in 30 seconds of weighing in constructive, you've literally you've multiplied the amount of time you've done weighing in the round by 1.5 times already compared to like an average round, which is huge. Like most rounds that I judge come down to weighing. So if you start that early, it makes it much more likely that you can win. And you have a clear path to the ballot going for each of the arguments that you started weighing. And I think this makes intuitive sense too, because when people extend arguments in the back half, they sort of re-explain the argument and then they do weighing on the argument. But I mean, if that's the case, if weighing sort of goes along with the extension and the extension is a re-explanation of what you had in case, why not put the weighing in case too? Like it makes sense. If you're reading an argument in second constructive and it's not weighed against first constructive, it's not really complete offense. Like if it's not weighed against their arguments, these are not reasons that you win the round. These are reasons that you have a chance in the round. And so you might as well try to win the round out the gate. Like why are we waiting until later in the round to connect the dots and put in the final piece of the puzzle that makes it a complete argument that is round winning instead of just existing in the round? It seems sort of silly, right? Like you should have paths to the ballot ready to go from out the gate instead of having sort of like things that you could threaten to go for out the gate. Like, why not just complete them, make them as dangerous as possible from the get-go? It doesn't take that much more work. And I guess the hesitancy that people have is like, oh, I don't want to commit to a strategy, right? I don't want to commit to a collapse too early. I don't want to give away what I'm going to go for or something. It makes their rebuttal easier. You don't have to, right? Like, just compare each of your contentions against their best contention. That's all you have to do. You don't even have to compare it against all of their contentions. Like, just pick the one you think they're most likely to go for based on round reports, past precedent, whatever you think that has the biggest impact on their case. And usually also whatever is at the bottom of their case just typically tends to be what they go for. And then just like weigh all of your contingents independently against that. They don't have to be each one the most important thing in the round, right? They just have to each be more important independently than their best contingent. So this is a way to make your time sucks and second constructive like way more dangerous. Instead of just being like a random argument they can kind of ignore. If they, they'll if they're smart, they'll spend like 30 seconds on it and just sort of hand wave it and you won't go for it. You can add a little implication at the bottom that's just like this turns their case. And sometimes, okay, this is maybe a hot take, but honestly, sometimes this is more important than reading an impact. Like, not even lying, right? Like, it is often better to read weighing in place of an impact because an impact is only like the only reason an impact matters is because it can get you closer to that weighing. So if you just do the weighing in place of the impact, you don't even need the impact. Like, for example, if you just say this links into their impact instead of reading your own independent impact that's probably going to get outweighed on probability anyway, or on magnitude anyway, mind you, then it's way easier. Like, you do it quicker and it's more effective because it's actually comparative instead of just introducing another random card that says a bunch of people die into the round, which is not really that necessary, to be honest. I also think people sort of underestimate the extent to which people, debaters can, in fact, just say, clearly this kills a lot of people, and then explain why it kills more people than the other side instead of giving a quantification that has a bigger number. The explanation of the weighing is usually the more important thing, especially if you're just using it to turn case. So all of this is a rant to say second constructive needs to flex more. Like, you need to actually be more flexible and respond to first constructive more, shift your strategy slightly in response to first constructive. I think teams that do this and innovate in this way will win more. I just think that's true. And judges love it. Like, you will be rewarded with more speaker points. It's something new and exciting in a world of debate where judges are judging the same round over and over again. So please, for the love of God, make your second constructives interesting and make them interact with first constructive.